Hey everyone, how's it going? Seth Williams here. You're listening to the REtipster podcast. This is episode 204. Today I'm talking with Nicholas Nick. So Nicholas runs a little company called Lead Mining Pros. They focus on cold calling for real estate investors. And today we're going to dive into this subject of cold calling, specifically as it relates to land investors, because this is a marketing channel that has gotten much more popular in the land investing space over the past couple of years. It used to be years ago that nobody did this in land investing, but nowadays a lot of people are using it. In fact, of all the big land investors I know, I might even go so far as to say that most of them are using cold calling on some level, and some of them do only cold calling. So this isn't some like fad or passing trend. Cold calling has proven its value, and I think it's here to stay. But the question is this something you should be pursuing as a way to find land deals? Maybe you're somebody who hasn't gotten into this yet, or maybe you're somebody who is using it, but you're just wondering, like, could it be better? Or am I doing it right? So we're going to talk about all that stuff here. Nicholas is here to help. Nicholas, welcome. How you doing?
Doing awesome, man. Doing awesome. I love that. I love what you mentioned there. Am I doing it right? Right. I mean, there is so many nuances to cold calling. I remember I had a client call me years ago, and he goes, "Nick, all right, I'm not getting good luck. I'm doing it on my own. So first I pulled a list from Fiverr," and I was like, wrong answer. He's like, then my script mentions everyone by name. So he was doing this thing where he was like saying, "Hey, is this Bill?" And I was like, wrong answer, right? And I was like, dude, I kind of feel bad. I was like, I'm picking apart your whole strategy. But what that also showed me is that there's a lot more nuance. When you're good at something, it's hard to tell. It's hard to go up to a pro football player and be like, "You're really good." He's been good his whole life. He's looking at the guy better than him. So we discount our skill set sometimes. But I'll never forget that day. It was a good reminder on how important the systems and processes are to actually get great results.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, maybe to start this off, maybe just tell us about your background, like in the real estate business in general. What does your story look like?
Absolutely. Yeah. And I'll give you the short version because boy, can this be 40 minutes by accident. But yeah, so I'm super fortunate. One of the things that's unique about me is I used to run restaurants for a living. So for 13 years, I was in a very intense customer service situation. And that really taught me a lot about emotions, people, and I'm face to face, right? I'm not behind a phone. Okay. So I have to learn all this stuff. So I did that for 13 years. That was my first real life. That was about 18 to 31. Okay. Then from there, I went on and I accidentally stumbled upon a real estate investing company that taught people how to invest in real estate. And I was hired as their event coordinator. So I don't know a lot about real estate. I do know a lot about organizing events and throwing parties. I figure restaurants are just parties that happen 12 hours a day. So I could be an event coordinator, right? So I start throwing events all over the nation, okay, for this company. I threw about 40 events for them over a 3-year period. One of the events were $6,000 per person and 30 people went. The other one was $15,000 per person and 5 people went. So I wrote the schedule. I called the attendees. I made sure the hotel was good. I mean, nothing was anyone else's responsibility, right? So it was all on me, which was really cool. One of those events focused around direct mail, okay? And we were paying for direct mail and it was going out, and then we were having the students call the direct mail leads, right? Well, direct mail is expensive, no matter who you are, whether you're $1 million corporation or you're a young real estate investor, right? And what was happening was the company was forking out $4,000 in direct mail every time, and it wasn't always yielding the best result. And the other part was I was like, how much experience is our students missing out on? So we shifted. I came up with the bright idea to shift to cold calling. It's completely free, and what we started teaching was just dial by hand. So we would then have all the attendees show up. We'd have a list with phone numbers, instead of giving them direct mail leads, which are super hot and hot and cold, right? Direct mail, it's either F you or yes, I want to sell, right? That's what I always joke about and say. But I was like, let's put the power in their hands. So we turned that whole event from a direct mail event into a sheer cold calling event. Then I was introduced to Dean Graziosi. Okay, you might know that name.
Mm-hmm.
Dean fell in love with me. I started throwing these events for Dean. And I was literally out of the restaurant career for 11 months. And I'm already working for Dean Graziosi now. Like, I'm so glad I left the restaurants. Okay. And then when that job came to an end, I was like, well, I've seen cold calling work. Like every event, someone's closing a deal, right? So I was like, I know this works. So when that job came to an end, I went home and began cold calling every day for my first real estate deal. Okay. Now, one of the things I did differently is I went live on Facebook every day. And I did my cold calling live so people could see it. And I actually did that secret is I did that to hold myself accountable. Okay. Because I didn't want to do it either. Right. So it's like, I'll go live every day. So I started cold calling every day. This was 8 years ago. After 3 months of cold calling, I did about 15,000 dials a month. It was 300 to 600 dials a day was my goal. 300 was my minimum. 600 was my maximum. If I had 600, I was always like, yeah, great job today, Nick. Right? You did it, buddy. You did it. Then I had people start calling me. Hey, Nick, I see you cold calling. Could you cold call for me? And I was the only cold caller. It wasn't a team of VAs. It was me only, right? Could I pay you to cold call for me? Another guy calls. Could I pay you to cold call for me? And little did I know that that was the beginning of this company. I ended up founding Lead Mining 2 months after that, officially. I made a Facebook post inside of a group that went viral, all right? And I got over 25 clients the next day signed up. And we've been off to the races ever since. Ever since then, we've never had a week at less than $9,000 in sales. And right now, my business probably averages about $30,000 to $35,000 in sales a week after that 8 years. So it's been a blessing. And now I have a whole team. I have 30 employees. We have only Americans. That's one of the big niches about us is everyone's an American cold caller. There's no foreign callers on the line. So that's a little bit of my background and maybe why I'm qualified to be here.
Yeah. No, that's great to know. Well, so a bunch of questions can come out of that. So your note there about American cold callers. I mean, I can think of reasons why that would be beneficial, but maybe you can confirm or deny. Why is that helpful? Is it just like the not having a foreign accent, or is it they culturally understand things better, or why is that a big advantage?
So the accent is only an issue on the first impression, right? Now, it's really not a big deal if someone has an accent. It is a big deal if they live halfway across the world and they have an accent. And the reason why is if someone says HVAC to a Filipino, they don't know what HVAC is.
Sure.
I mean, honestly, when I had foreign cold callers, and I used to offer both, so I do have a thorough answer for you, but sometimes they'd be on a Zoom call. They're outside in a hut. Like, I'm not kidding. Like, they don't even have, right? They probably don't even know what air conditioning is in some cases, right? Let alone HVAC, right? And so when there's that gap in communication, it also hurts. But the main benefit is the rapport. So like you automatically start with greater rapport. You know, someone calls you and I don't want to come up with a fake bad foreign accent, but they hit you with the thick accent. We tune out a little bit, regardless. You know, same thing. Even if I call Dell or I call AT&T or I call T-Mobile and I get a foreign person, I'm like, no way, right? It's like, and the problem is, it's not racism, it's trust. It's can I trust that the words coming out of my mouth, they actually understand? So one of the big things I've learned about foreign people or foreign callers, VAs, is that they say yes in perfect English. Yes. So we think that they fully understand. And the truth is, most of the time they don't. But because they say yes in perfect English, we think they understand. And I think that that's one of the big gaps. So us trusting them on the phone, and a lot of the times it's rapport loss. And with that American, they think it's a local. They think it's like, so one of our goals is we want to kind of sound official. Hi, good morning. Thank you for answering. Are you the owner of 123? We want them to think like we're from the government, like they need to talk to us almost, right? Because when you pick up the phone, I can't speak for anyone else, but when I pick up the phone and it's an American, I'm automatically relieved. I don't even care why they're calling anymore, right? I'm like, yeah. I'm like, what is this about again? This sounds important because you're not foreign. So I think some of those reasons are the best. And the last thing I'll share, the reason I recently, 6 months ago, I got rid of my entire foreign team. And I was looking at the stats. I'm very meticulous with my numbers. Okay. So the American callers were averaging a lead in every 225 dials. Okay. The foreign callers were averaging a lead in every 500 dials.
That's a big difference.
Now, I was charging half as much for the foreign callers. So they were half the price, but they were costing my clients more than double, if that makes sense. So my thought was, why would I sell this product that just distracts my clients from better results, right? I know it's cheaper. So people go, I'll take the foreign call. And I know that makes sense, but it was a more expensive cost per lead is actually what it was at the end of the day. So after looking at that, I said, you know what, let's only go Americans. Let's only focus. And in addition to that, Americans are easy to train on a professional level. It's like I can really push my Americans to new heights. A foreign person, hey, you didn't use the script. I said the words. Yeah, I know you did, but you didn't say them right. But it's like they're a little too far behind to make that super polished presentation that we're kind of looking for.
Yeah. Is it hard to find Americans that will do this kind of work?
Honestly, bro, I hate to spill my secret sauce here, but I'd love to. Dude, so the way I find employees, first of all, training is everything. Finding them is the easy part, okay? Training them, processes, accountability, but I'll gladly go through my entire employment process. But I'm in a local group in the city that I'm in. And every couple months I make a post and I say, hey, I'm hiring a work from home position. It's cold calling. You don't have to sell anything because that's the first thing people think is that cold calling means they have to pester someone to sell. No, if they don't want to sell, we have like 2 lines that you say and then we get off the phone, right? It's very simple. But we cold call them. I pay $13 to $17 an hour. That's it. You'd be surprised of the quality of employee that comes out of the woodwork on a true work from home position.
Yeah.
Right? It's like, because so many people, they just want to work from home, but I have single mothers, I have engineers, I have business owners, all those people work for me because they're also refining a skill too. So it's actually been very easy but here's my rule of thumb. You got to hire 5 to get 1 good one. So, a lot of people, they're going to come up and disappear and that's okay. That's okay. I don't mind if you disappear. Actually, anyone who's American watching this, if you're looking for work, you can message me and I'll gladly get you started if you want to refine some skills. It's a really great way. And the other thing I do with my team is I let them create their own schedule. So I often call myself the Uber of cold calling. Okay, so let's be honest. Uber would be a really crappy job if there was such a thing as an Uber boss. Hey, Billy, what are you doing? You got to be at the airport from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. Like nobody wants to get yelled at by their boss and have to pick up strangers in their vehicle, right? And so with cold calling, I let my entire team create their own schedule. And that helps them feel empowered. It helps them feel like entrepreneurs. Now they're not like, oh, Nick's making me clock in, or oh, I can't take my daughter to the doctor's appointment. You can do whatever you need to do. And so that provides a large quality of life for the employees. So that my other theory is Americans, if they're forced to work on a 9 to 5 basis, you will not keep a cold caller very long because it really is a very crappy job. And you have to give them some type of freedom to come and go. And last thing I'll say is when someone's in a bad mood, you don't want them calling anyways, right? Like if you're grumpy today, don't call. That's my rule. Don't call. If you're grumpy, because you're going to only get grumpy leads. You're going to be pissing everybody off by accident.
So just like a weird little anecdote from my own life. 3 years ago, our family bought a dog. We found this dog down in Indiana, and apparently there was a Amish dog breeder that bred these dogs. The person that I called and talked to on the phone, though, she sounded like super professional, like super relatable, just like likable person. Like she totally sold me on the dog. She made it really easy. And we drove down to Indiana to pick up the dog. And it was just really interesting. We drove to her house. It was a completely trashed out mobile home. I mean, it just looked like a dump. She did not look well put together at all, but she was really good on the phone. And I could imagine if she were to go out and try to get a job anywhere, like she might have a hard time because she didn't present herself that well. But on the phone, she was awesome.
Yeah.
And I can see what you mean in terms of like, there's a lot of people who they don't want to play that game of like making themselves look a certain way, but they know their way around the phone. For a person like that, who has that type of skill set, I can totally see why that would be appealing. I'm sure there's a lot of people out there that kind of fit into that mold. Sounds like you're good at finding them.
There is, and a lot of them work for. I'll tell you, my average employee's been with me for 5 years right now. And it's like, when you take care of them and they are the right person, and I'll tell you, you do need a talkative person. It's like my best cold callers are all a little crazy. You get on a Zoom call with them and they'll talk to you for an hour and a half before you get a word in. But that's what makes them the best cold caller, right? So it's like, it's fun. Now when I meet people that are a little eccentric, I'm like, are you looking for work? I'm like, and I'm a little eccentric, so that's not a judgment, right? But I'm like, are you looking for work? Because I have a great opportunity for you. I think you'd be great at.
So kind of a fundamental question, land investors, real estate investors, we have lots of different ways to find and reach, potential sellers. We got direct mail, we got texting, we got ringless voicemail, we got email, you can do paid ads, and we've got cold calling. What makes cold calling effective or special versus any of these other marketing channels?
So there's a couple things. One is I call direct mail like a scratch off ticket. Okay. I don't know how you check your mail. Here's how I check my mail. I open up my mailbox. Everything that's colorful, I grab and I throw right in the trash. Okay. Whatever's colorful, I don't need. Anything that's a white envelope, I then go through it. Mm-hmm. And so it's like the first part about direct mail is we really don't even know if they saw it, in my opinion. Right. And then if they saw it, did they put it on the counter? Did they throw it right in the trash? Every person checks their mail every day. They got a system. And they're not going through garbage mail because they've been getting garbage mail for 30 freaking years. So, the thing is, I think mail, it does work, right? There's definitely no doubt about it. But we really don't know if they saw it. Okay. I'll jump into Facebook ads next. I think Facebook ads for land is a waste of time. And here's why. I run my own Facebook ads. When you sell something on Facebook, if you have, let's say in a city of 10 million people, there's only 2,000 available lots of land. Okay, let's say 1 million people, there's 2,000 lots of available land. For Facebook to find one of those only 2,000 people is going to cost you a fortune. It's not a big, there's a reason why the t-shirts and the shoes and the little gadgets go so far on Facebook, because everybody wants it. Everybody needs it. When it's land, there's not enough land owners, in my opinion. Now, houses, great for Facebook ads. A lot of people have houses out there, but land is very sparse. Okay. So it's not as common. It's not like, oh, everyone owns a piece of land. No, actually, very rarely do people own pieces of land. And so Facebook ads, it can get expensive to do the outreach, because what Facebook is looking for is actually such a small target on the map. So that's Facebook ads. Then we do calling and texting. And the perk of calling and texting is we know we spoke to that person. That is actually the difference, right? It's not like maybe, kind of, I don't know. We sent them a text and we called them twice. So for me, it's that sheer direct to seller contact and communication that really makes it much more special. And with land specifically, so few people are doing it that it gets insane results. So I tell people all the time, Nick, where should I go if I want to get land leads? I say, well, I'm going to be honest with you. I've never not seen leads come out of a land company before. Mm-hmm. Now, I would stay away from like 3 cities. I'll just share with everybody real quick, and probably more, but definitely these 3: Houston, Dallas, Miami, and Orlando. Let's make it 4. Okay.
And why is that?
That's it. Well, yeah, anything that's like super metro, right, is really what it is, because there's not a lot of land there. And the people that do have it know what it's worth because it's such a metro area, right? But it's like maybe you throw Phoenix into that mix. So, we're at 5. Right. And it's like, you stay away from those. We're going to get you a bunch of leads. Right. There's no doubt about it. Now, what I tell my clients to research is how long does land take to sell in their market? If I can get land leads anywhere, your highest priority should be length of time to close. Mm-hmm. Right. And so that's one of the big indicators I give people. Right. Is like, hey, we're going to find the leads. You need to find the place where leads don't sit on the market for too long that makes you uncomfortable, right? So that's one of the other perks of land is it almost always go well. We do houses too. Houses, I have this saying, I say, if you're a land investor, there's a 90% chance you're going to love us. If you're a house investor, there's like a 50% chance you're going to love us. And that's just because houses, it's so saturated. It's such like a crapshoot. But land is so unsaturated, especially with American callers. That's the other thing, someone who owns 2 acres in Texas, they don't want to talk to a Filipino about buying their land. They actually know for a fact that that guy is not the one buying their land, right? So their guard already comes up too.
So on the part, I think if I know your story right, so you started doing this with houses and land became a thing, I don't know how many years ago, but it wasn't the original way that you started out with cold calling. What are some of the big differences there between doing this for house investors versus land investors, other than what you just mentioned about, the saturation or the lack of saturation for the land space? Is there anything else just fundamentally different about what it takes to succeed at this for land versus houses?
Honestly, it's really very simple. I mean, again, I'm so good at systems, but so I'm trying to think of, one is, the intro, right? So when you call someone on a house, you say, hey, I'm looking for the owner of 123 Sycamore Street. Okay. When you're calling someone for land, even if it has an address, don't say the address. Hey, I'm reaching out about the 2 acre parcel of land you have in Galveston, Texas. Right. And I think that is a big differentiator there. Right. I think, don't go in leading with the address. You're going to confuse them, stuff like that. Mention the land, mention the acres. So that's one of our big differentiators that we do differently is we focus on acres, because that also reminds them I'm only calling about land. Right. And it's like, and that's all, most land investors, they don't want to deal with properties with houses on them either. That's one of the main things. Other than that, it's really fundamentally the same. It's easier. They're easier to talk to. You can build confidence better because, house investors, man, I used to have an employee who would send me her horrible call recordings. And this sweet lady picks up, hi, how's it going? Hey, I was wondering if you ever considered selling before. She says the most vulgar thing to her. And I won't even repeat it. But you would not believe a lady who was just so pleasant 5 seconds before said that to her. And so the other thing that is a big differentiator is that you get way more beat up emotionally when you're calling on houses, and that can really, I'll tell you, when you're new in this game, I've been around for 8 years. I still don't have a lot of emotional stamina. When someone beats me up emotionally, I'm like, oh my God. So the other perk is the calls do go a little bit better. So I think it's a little bit better of a confidence boost. But I'd say that intro is really the best part. Land questions are easier. They're easier to, with the house, any general repairs, how much is the mortgage, how much do you want for it, stuff like that. Land is all due diligence. Is there utilities on the property? Is it wooded or is it cleared? Do you have a survey for the property? We ask this great question. Do you know what can be built on it? We have another one that says, why did you buy the property in the first place? Right? So the questions are almost easier to answer. I feel like the house questions, the thing about houses, people are very personal. If someone ran a house into the ground, they have shame about that. No one is like, I destroyed that house. Right? So it's like you almost have to like chisel away at this tough exterior with the house to figure it out. Land is how much you want to give me. And I'll lead that into my next segue. And if you have a different of opinion, I'd love to talk about it.
Take me through the sequence of calls. Does it take for somebody to find and close a land deal through cold calling? I guess my assumption is your team handles this first call. And then once they identify whether somebody's motivated to sell or not, they then pass it on to me. And I have call number 2. Is my objective to close the deal or make the offer on that call? Or am I doing a third call? What happens in call 1, call 2, call 3, if there's a call 3?
I love that you asked. So I don't even know if you know this, but I just created an entire system where I literally tell you exactly what to say to every single one of my leads, right? Since we have been open for 8 years and I am so hands-on, I do my welcome calls with my clients. I do campaign recap calls with my clients. Like I'm so involved. So I created this. I really call it the perfect acquisition system for land. And I would love your feedback on it after we talk about it. Okay. So the first rule of thumb in land, in my opinion, is never ask the seller how much they want for the property. Never, ever, ever. That is such a bad question. You're setting yourself up. If they say number that's too high, you'll never get them far down. So my theory is you'd rather work up from your low offer than down from their high offer. Okay. So that's the first part. So a lot of people go, ask them how much. No, we do not ask that question on our call. It is not how much do you want for the property. So my strategy is we have the first call, very good, due diligence, very friendly, fact finding, similar to your Amish dog breeder. Okay. We want to have that warm and fuzzy vibe. We don't want to send you pissed off leads. We want to send you happy leads, right? So you get the lead. Now, what I tell my clients to say is call them up. You almost don't even let them talk. Okay, this is the first touch. You just got the lead that same day. Hey, how's it going? You just spoke to Sherry about the 3-acre piece of land in Galveston, Texas. Is that right? Oh, yeah, that's right. Wonderful. Well, Sherry told me you were interested in selling. So let me tell you what happens next. Now, I'm going to do some online research. So one thing I recommend is don't say comps, right? One big lesson in sales is don't use your jargon for the customer, okay? Hey, I'm going to do some online research and I'm going to see if this property is right for me. If it is right for me, I'm going to send an offer out to you in the next 24 to 48 hours. Now, when I send that to you, do you want that via email or regular mail? Oh, email. Oh, wonderful. Could I just get your email address real quick to make sure? By the way, I will only be sending the official offer. That's the way I want to start. Official offer. Okay. And it's because I'm not going to start spamming you on email. I'm not going to start asking you questions on email. I'm only going to send you the official document when the time comes. And then I have this really ninja line where I say, and by the way, have you ever sold a piece of land like this before? No, you haven't. Okay, look, that's great. So what I like to do with new land sellers is when I send the contract, I would love to be on the phone with you. And I want to walk you through the entire contract. All right, so why don't we make an appointment for 2 days from now at 2 p.m. and I'll get your email. I've already got your email. I'll send you over the appointment and I'll send over the offer and we'll cover the offer live on the call. Okay, now keep in mind, this is your first call, but their second call. All right. So now when they say, well, how much are you going to offer me? Oh, well, sir, I don't know. I haven't done the online research yet. I have to make sure it's right. I want to make sure I'm seeing the right thing. And then I might even call with some additional questions, blah, blah, blah. All right. So then we get off the phone. We have our appointment in 2 days from now. Then in those 2 days, we do the online research. We get it all ready. We call the client. Here's what I recommend. Do not let them look at that offer without you being on the phone. Okay. And here's why. If it's a low offer and you're not on the phone, they're going to look at it and say, I knew it. I knew he was going to lowball me. And their emotions are going to be all sporadic. They're going to be all over the place. If you're on the phone with them and you're like, hey, it should be in your inbox right now if you want to open that up, they're going to go, oh, it's a little lower than what I was hoping for. And that difference of their emotional reaction could be the difference of you getting the deal or not. And so I recommend being on the phone with them, sending them the offer and literally, hey, so I'm offering $60,000 for this piece of land. I did see that it is wooded. So that's going to include me clearing it. I did see it doesn't have utilities. So that's going to include me putting in utilities. So we're having like this, it's not an arbitrary low ball offer. It's, hey, it's wooded. It needs to be cleared. It doesn't have utilities. It doesn't have water. So the reason why we're at 60 is I'm going to work on these things, right? And so you're making it make sense. I always say, think of a restaurant. The chef doesn't just come out and go, yeah, it feels like you ate like $200 worth of food. They give you an itemized bill. So I like to think about how can we give them this type of item, even if it's verbal, right? But this type of itemized bill. So that's kind of my whole strategy. Then you got them on the phone and you're almost there at the closing table, which, a lot of house investors are so successful because they're in front of them at the closing table. So this strategy I just brought up, I believe, is the most intimate way that you can get closings. And so it's a 3-call system. Our call, your first call, your second call. And what's important about this strategy is this. Maybe 5 days have gone by now since we first started. So they're thinking about you for 5 days. By the time the offer comes, even if they don't like it, you know what they're going to think? Do I want to start all over? Like this was a nice man. He did everything he said he was going to do. He called me when he said he was going to. He gave me there's a lot of things you're doing right here too. And it's also very low pressure for you. So the system I created, it's not like heavy on negotiations. It's not heavy on, there's no deceit, right? It's all just upfront communication. So that's the strategy I recommend. And that's not just a cold call. Honestly, that's, in my opinion, every lead you get, until the end of time. But making that low offer on the third call is extremely important because they are going to like you enough now not to hate you when that offer comes in. If I'm talking to you for 5 minutes and I get on the first call and I go, yeah, 20,000. Yeah, click. And then what we're really doing is we're telling that person never to answer our phone call again. When you give the offer too early, you're telling them to ignore you, if you think about it.
Yeah. Well, it's really interesting. So I know a handful of people who are doing it very similar to what you just described there, just very, very phone call intensive. Like if you're afraid of the phone, this isn't the strategy for you. But it also makes me think, this is very different from somebody who's sending out blind offers without looking at anything really, to just kind of like throwing a bunch of junk at the wall and seeing what sticks. It makes me wonder if you're going to be going through this process of making phone calls just to sign the contract and walk them through it. You probably don't want to be offering like 10% of market value in those cases, right? Unless you can somehow justify, like, it's really going to take me this much to make all these improvements. And like, are there any limitations or parameters? Like, you should probably make no less than a 50% offer if you're going to go through this. Or could somebody justify literally any offer and there's no reason to be afraid of them getting mad at you?
Well, so one strategy that I have, if I go a little bit more in depth, is I call it a proactive price reduction. So one of my clients, we created, so I go deep with my clients, and we created a due diligence checklist for them. So on their second call, they confirm, hey, so I see here the property is wooded. Is that right? Yeah, it is. Oh man, did you know that it costs $10,000 per acre to clear a property? Right? Oh, I know that. And you're not saying who's going to do it. You're just move on, right? Educate and move on. So for me, I think it's really all depending on if the numbers make sense or not. If you can make them make sense. So let's say now we get to the closing table and they go, this is $30,000 less than I thought, right? Oh, hey, I completely understand that. When we spoke about clearing the property, did you plan on doing that or did you want me to do that? Right. And so for me, I think the financial objections come in with our ability to make it make sense. Right. And it's like, hey, if you're going to, honestly, sir, if you're going to clear the property, I could give you $10,000 more right now. But just so you know, I offer this as a service. This is what we do every day. So in my opinion, it's not so much the offer value, it's how much can you make it make sense to them. Because what we're doing here is we are wanting to show them that we have integrity. Does that make sense? So it's not just a low offer is fine, but because I said so, I think is not fine. Does that make sense? If we can find a way to make it make sense, and I have a great line, and they say it's worth more. Hey, maybe I missed something. Is there a lake on the property? Like play innocent. Hey, you know what? When I was comping this thing, hey, I want this property to be worth more too. Tell me about it. What makes it worth more? I would love to pay you more for this property if it's worth more, kind of thing. So that's kind of the strategy I use. So I do agree that maybe it's not a 10% offer strategy. I think that one of the things I coach against, and I understand working quote unquote super qualified leads, but money, in my opinion, is not what qualifies a lead. In my opinion, what qualifies a lead is their energy. If they are grumpy as but they're willing to sell it at 10% or 10 cents on the dollar, that's not going to be fun for you. If they're happy and they're easy to talk to and they're a good person and all this other stuff. So it's like one I recommend my clients do is they qualify based off energy. Because how often, and I used to have a client do this. He told me the way he would train acquisition managers is he would let them listen to a call recording of them saying, I'm never going to take less than $100,000. And he goes, then he would show that they bought it for $55,000. So his rule was, if price is the only thing we do not line up on, do not hang up the phone. And so that's my rebuttal to the super low offer because how many leads are we exploding on our way? Now, I get it. Anyone that says yes is now super hot. I get it, right? But how much money are we really leaving on the table? Like what if AT&T called and said, "Yeah, we only have the $5,000 plan. Well, we did away with the $50 a month plan." Are they going to have massive, large sales that go on? Yeah, they are. But are they going to have flow through? Are they going to have longevity? And the thing about land, in my honest opinion, there's not enough land parcels out there for us to be blowing these leads. This is not houses. Like there's probably 20-1 houses to land ratio. So in my opinion, having a foreign cold caller and blowing up your leads with insanely low initial offers is not smart because there's not enough landowners in your market to sustain your business if that is your strategy. That is at least my fundamental truth, right?
That's actually really interesting what you just said there, because I've always heard the opposite and sort of seen the opposite in terms of like there's a lot more undeveloped land in the country than there are houses, but that doesn't necessarily mean that there are more landowners who are interested in selling. So I don't know, just how have you determined that in terms of like there's way more house sellers than there are land sellers?
Well, don't forget, I pull lists for people, right? So if you tell me you want a list of houses in Atlanta, right? I'm going to pull up 75,000 houses, right? If you tell me you want lots in Atlanta, I'm going to be lucky to get 1,000.
Most land investors are looking in rural areas, though, right? Outside of Atlanta, they wouldn't be looking in there in the first
Well,
place.
they might be, but I never plug in a market and I'm like, oh my God, 10,000 landowners ever, never. We pull lists for everyone using Land Vision and Data Tree. And the number one issue we have with land is getting enough records every time. And our lists are small, 1,000 to 2,000 records. But if we do the same thing with houses, we might have 10,000 absentee owners, right? So it's like, so you are right potentially on an acreage, like acreage available. But when one person owns 50 acres, that's half a county. So if I blow up that one person or I do that wrong, so it's like for me, so anyways, that's how I came to that conclusion. Because absentee owners, and that's not even owner occupied, that's absentees are people that own a home they don't live in. But that's like often in the thousands, maybe even tens of thousands. And every time we pull land, I would say it would be an anomaly to pull land in a county and get more than 4,000 records in that whole county.
Oh, really?
For land. But if I were to pull houses in that county, I'd probably end up with 50,000.
I mean, I think a lot of this is a function of how you are filtering your list. Like when we say land, are we specifying what the acreage is or just literally anything that's land? And in Data Tree, I know there's like over a dozen different types of land.
And so with us, most of my clients do 0 to 20.
So that right there, I mean, that would whittle it down quite a bit.
Yeah, exactly. But the other part is like even these data providers, the other thing I've learned is when you get into super large parcels of acre, I don't know if their data gets worse or there's just fewer people, right? But it's like you do start going into county lines and all this other stuff. But so it's like we have a client right now that does 0 to 5 and 5 to 100. So we have right now are a couple of those. So like we kind of see those differentiators. The other thing about land too is I don't filter. A lot of people, they try to get, the other thing is some people are just doing tax delinquent land. In our experience, that's a waste of time.
Why do you say that?
So because in the short, I see the numbers. So if I pursue landowners and they're tax delinquent, that tax delinquent list is going to have 200 people on it. The full land list is going to have 2,500 people. So then the ones that aren't paying their taxes is going to be way smaller, right? So the first part is your pool is extremely small. The second part is I've noticed that we get a ton of leads. No matter what, land is very simple. They're either building on it or they're selling it. That's it. There's no, like with houses, grandma could be living in there. My sister could be living in there, right? All this other stuff could be happening. With land, they're either building on it or they're selling it. So focusing on sold tax delinquent might be a great strategy to start, right? Especially with direct mail, as expensive as it is. But I have not seen any correlation with tax delinquent land producing more leads than just regular land.
Yeah, I mean, there's some nuance in there. Like, certainly, you're not going to have as many leads to work with if you get a delinquent tax list. I think it's more a function of the leads you do talk to. Do you want them to be a lot more desperate and motivated to sell? Because they usually will be, but again, the pool is going to be a lot smaller. So it's almost like, are you intentionally casting a wider net or not? And I think with cold calling, one of the benefits of it is like you can extract a lot more deals out of people that might not necessarily come off as desperate at first glance. Whereas if you're sending like blind offers, you're going to lose tons of them because you're not really trying that hard. You're like sort of the whole nature of it is like you don't even want people to contact you unless they're willing to put the letter down, pick up the phone, call you. A lot of people just don't care that much. Whereas a cold call it'll kind of get in there a little bit better.
Yeah, we're like prying,
Yeah, yeah,
right? As a little
exactly.
bit more, which is also why the follow-up system I created is gentle and nice, right? And it's like, but you are 100% right, and that is one of the different. And mail's more expensive at maybe $1 a piece or something. At my company, we basically give you 3 touches for less than $1 each. You get the 2 American calls plus the text message. Now, what we do and what we can do to match the blind offer is we cold call vaguely, like we talked about using that script. But when we do the text message, we can text message blind offers. So you can get all those leads. Now, I have clients doing that. Their leads drop drastically. So again, we have to ask ourselves, what are we trying to do here? Are we trying to make millions of dollars investing in land? Or are we trying to work the hottest leads and hope that they become deals? So my strategy being a lead generator, I put it on my clients to have a superior process that turns what I call maybe plus leads, right? Anyone who's a maybe or more into a closed deal. Because I don't know about you, your first year, you might kill it with your low ball strategy. Year 2 comes, now what? I remember I had a client years ago say to me, Nick, I want to close more. I want to close twice as many deals this year than last year. How much more do I need to spend with you? That's what he said to me. And I said, great news, 0 more. And he said, what are you talking about? I said, you need to look back at every lead that didn't close last year and look at what you did wrong. Because if you want to close more deals, it's not spending more money, it's converting more of the leads you already have. At least that's my opinion on it. And it's like, I get it. We all want the 10 cent on the dollar guy, right? Yeah, I know we do, right? But the like that's the bottom of the barrel, and that works maybe for the first 2 years of our strategy. But then those start to run out, and then we're going to be forced to adapt anyways. I had one of the coaching companies I worked at. He had a land investor there, and he hired we got him 25 leads for $550, and he called me up, and he's been doing direct mail for 20 years. And to your point, he goes, I'm not going to call these leads. He's like, I'm lazy after all these years. He goes, I just want them to call me and close the deal. You know what? That's totally fine. But at the same time, that guy, he's going to find himself a dinosaur at some point. At some point, the money's going to stop flowing because he's not willing to do what it takes potentially to adapt, to close more deals. And I think the process I created isn't that daunting. So my rule is every lead's worth 2 to 5 minutes of your time. If they're an hang up on them. Okay. I'm not telling anyone to work with them. That is not my MO. But if they're easy to talk to, I would not hang up the phone on them. So I kind of keep that general.
Yeah, sure. It is interesting. I think a lot of us can relate to that. It's way easier to just like throw money at a problem than to actually do the work. I get that all the time. Like I'm in the process of trying to migrate to a different CRM right now. And as part of the process, I can pay $1,000 for a consultant to walk me through the whole process and hold my hand. And I'm happy to pay the $1,000, but as part of that process, I have to get on 5-hour-long calls with them to spend the time to do it. Yeah, it's just like, I don't want to do that. I just want to like flick the switch and have it work and pay $1,000 for it. And it's just a good lesson in life. Like a lot of times what's really needed is your effort and attention. And it's not just more money.
We've been in business for 8 years, and I'll be honest with you, I'm kind of on easy street right now. And I have 30 employees. I've got thousands of systems. I'm working very little, maybe 2-3 hours a day right now. And I've gotten comfortable working 2-3 hours a day to the point of my land of, I don't want to call these people, right? And I get it because I had a meeting with my employees yesterday and something broke. and the employees, they're not the owner, right? And one thing I said to them is I said, I think I got to take control back. And to your point is, and it's not a permanent thing, right? And I think this is what's important for us. So here's one thing I tell myself to address what you just said. I'm okay with diving back in as long as I've got an exit date. So like for your CRM, hey, you know what? If I focus on this for 1 month, I'll iron out all the kinks, I'll do all the stuff, then I'm back out. That helps me commit to this work, right? So a lot of my employees or clients, they'll say, Nick, I want to hire a VA. I say, do not hire a VA yet. I said, you need to hire me. You need to do the work yourself. And then you need to figure out what parts you want a VA to do. If you start and you just hire a VA right away, you don't know what you're supposed to do. They don't know what they're supposed to do. You're just going to find yourself feeling like you're walking around in the dark. And to your exact point, there has to be a level at some point where we actually do the work, at least at first. So I tell all my clients, you work the first 20 leads yourself. Okay. After those 20 leads, pay close attention, create a system, then pass that system off, if anything. But I will just say this because it could be confusing. I would never have a foreign person handle a hot lead ever. Okay. I'm okay with foreign people handling cold leads, handling lukewarm leads, right? But I would not have them handle a hot lead. I would never have them do acquisitions for you ever. Yeah, it's like how much, I have a video I just posted that says your $3 an hour VA is costing you $50,000 a month, right? It's like that guy blows up one deal and you're too busy going, but he's only $3 an hour. Yeah, but that's not, he's costing you hundreds of thousands of dollars a year. And so it's like, but they're still great. Have them do comps, have them send contracts, have them do text messages and work out of your CRM. I'm not saying don't use VAs. I am saying do not use VAs on deals that you think are going to close to talk to them on the phone. Keep them in the digital world where they can't maybe tell that they're a VA.
Well, on that whole note of hot lead versus cold lead versus lukewarm lead. So when your callers do their work and they identify a lead, whatever that means, and you pass off to the land investor, me, what level of motivation do they need to indicate for you to say that it's worth my time to call them and talk more? Like, do they just have to say that they want to sell, period? Or do they have to say that they want to sell at a discount? Like, how do you measure that and quantify it?
So with us, again, I'm a lead generator. So my strategy is to send, and I'll explain a couple ways, but my strategy is to send you leads, and you need to have a system that sifts the leads, right? The downside of this strategy is that you do have to sift through the leads, Now the upside is I have a $1,500 package where the average person closes 2 deals on a $1,500 purchase, right? And so it's like the upside is the ROI is through the roof. The downside is you do have to create a process. But again, I have courses that teach people that process, right? But to answer your question, our script is, I was calling about the 3-acre property in Texas. I was wondering if you've ever considered selling. If they say yes to that, you're going to get the lead no matter what. Now, we ask them qualifying questions, but I always say that does not mean that if they say one thing wrong, you're not going to get the lead, right? One big part of cold calling is it's much different. Their guard is up. They're not going to be 100% honest on the first call. But if they say, yes, they want to sell, you're going to get it. But you're still going to get all of our due diligence questions answered. So that when you get the lead, you can read it and evaluate it and give your approach. Now, I still never recommend judging a lead by its notes. Okay. You call the lead. That's where the 2 to 5 minutes comes in. Hey, how's it going? I saw you spoke to Sherry. Yeah, that was great. And you kind of have that talk. And if they're like, what do you want? Make me an offer and never call me again, or screw you, buddy. If any negativity, feel free to bow out of that. But I recommend touching every lead, giving them a call, and having the conversation from there. And the beauty of it is people that follow my system do close deals. Like all I really have to get my clients to do is call these freaking leads. That's all I have to do. But that's harder than it sounds. You'd be surprised how many people pay me $1,500 And then they say, I went on vacation and then I came back and it was too late. I'll call them next time I make a purchase from you. Right. And so one of my biggest goals is to get them over that hurdle, because it's hard. I'll tell you, it seems simple to call a lead. It's hard to get a hot lead in and be like, well, it's not as easy as it sounds for some people.
When you pass off one of these leads to me, I guess I get these notes, which I'm not sure how detailed those are, what they say, but like, do I get to hear a recording of the call? Is there any other information that I'm equipped with, or is the rule of thumb just like call everybody back no matter what?
Yeah, if I send you a lead, the rule of thumb is definitely to call everybody back no matter what. Now, texting leads, I do tell clients texting leads can often not be worth your time to call back, right? A lot of the texting leads might be sarcastic responses. My team, we don't, for texting, we don't pick up on sarcasm. If someone says $500,000, we're going to send you the lead, right? So I do tell people with texting, look, I understand some of those leads are not going to be worth a follow-up call. But I have another saying, and that is, to be a false yes is the dumbest thing I've ever heard in my life. Between AI and follow-ups and everything else, for someone to say yes when the answer is no is the dumbest thing. So even if they said yes at any point and we have an optimistic attitude, we can get to the core of if they really want to sell, right? But I do tell my clients, look, I agree that you're going to get some leads that aren't going to serve you, okay? It's easier for you, and this is a good note for all of us, it's easier for you to hit the delete key than for me to go back to my team and say, hey, when they say this one little thing on the phone, don't send the lead, right? Because now I'm going to get in their head and they're going to be like, oh, am I going to get yelled at for sending this over? So the other part is too, is like, I try not to get too in my team's head with like the nuanced answers, because, and I always have this joke, I said, you never want a $10 an hour employee qualifying your leads. So one thing I always say is, we don't send qualified leads. We ask the qualifying questions. Does that make sense? Because, all investors are different. I have one investor that says, Nick, if you can get me a raised hand and I can have a good conversation, I'm going to buy that piece of land. Then I have other people that are like, if they want more than 40 cents on the dollar, don't send them to me, right? And so it's like there's a lot of different ideologies sometimes that we have to play in. So that's a strategy I recommend. We'll send you all the yeses. I'm not under argument that every person is a great lead to call, but I am also under the impression that the one person I don't call is the one that would have closed. I have that FOMO when it comes to money.
So you've already kind of answered this question, but I'll try to ask it again just to get the full answer. What do I need to give you so that you can do your job and start cold calling people? Like, do you just need my raw list, or it sounds like you pull that list for people and you skip trace it? Or like, where does my work start and then you take over? And then where does your work stop and I take back over?
You can provide a list or we can pull it. Okay. So either one can happen. So you could either come to us with counties and acreages, okay, or you can come to us with your own list. Either way, we can skip trace, call it, and text it. I do have these done for you packages where we pull the list, skip trace it, call it, and text it. They're also discounted compared to just the individual services as well, as you're buying everything together. So you come to us with that. We can start within 24 to 48 hours. I do have 2 teammates call you and make sure that you watch. I have an onboarding course that's 35 minutes long. That's the course where I tell you exactly what to say and exactly what to do to every lead. I highly recommend everyone watches that, even if they're a veteran. Because I come from restaurants, I don't say what you think I'm going to say, right? It's a big it's like we're loving on them. My whole strategy loves on them. It doesn't take from them. So then you pay us, we start in 48 hours, you watch the course, and then we're off to the races. Then when the leads come in, and they'll come in the second they're generated, you'll get leads sent to you, bam, just like right away. So then when the leads come in, I recommend you do a couple things. But when the lead comes in, to answer your question, it's now in your court. We are done with that lead. But what I recommend you do is you get the lead, you read the whole notes, you be optimistic, right? Optimism is a very big deal. Okay. If you're pessimistic, I call it negative lead self talk. Okay. If you're trash talking the leads in your head or out loud to your friends, that you've already killed that lead, right? And so have a good attitude, read the notes, proofread your script that you're going to say before you call, then call the lead, and then execute that strategy that I offer. And I do offer follow up scripts. I also offer a flow chart where I show you like the whole process that it should go from our lead to dispode even. So with our clients, I give them the scripts on what to say. I tell them how long each call should last. And I also give them the flow chart so they could then track where that lead is at in the process.
Awesome. And what does it cost to use your service?
So my smallest package is $565 if you want all of it. Everything we do is no contracts, no commitments, no setup fees. So you can show up for $565, all right? Then you can go away if you want. You're not stuck with us. You're like, I wish I wouldn't have signed that contract. I know one of my competitors has a $10,000 3-month commitment. With us, you show up with $560. If you're happy, we keep going. If you're not happy, one thing we didn't talk about is I meet with all of my clients one-on-one in the middle and at the end of their campaigns, and I troubleshoot their campaign with them. So if they get a bunch of leads, I talk to them about their acquisition process. Are we calling the leads? How is that going? And if they don't get a bunch of leads, I help them troubleshoot their campaign. And I also have a satisfaction guarantee where if they're frustrated, by any means, I give them 20% of whatever they bought completely for free. So it's like this cool, again, like the way I love on my customers is the way I recommend they love on their sellers, right? It's like you're comfortable, you're safe, I have guarantees, I meet with you. And so a lot of my closing system is almost exactly what I do with my clients. It's very hands-on.
This might be a dumb question, but do people ever use cold calling services for selling properties? Or is it just purely acquisition?
Yeah, so I have clients use us to call builders. I have clients use us to call neighbors. With landlocked properties, we often sell those to neighbors. And I also have clients use us to call cash buyers as well. So yeah, it's not as common. Builders works very well. We've been doing builders for a while now. I can't get a list of builders, but if someone can get a list of builders, we can absolutely call them very easily. We already have a builder script. But yeah, so they do use us for that as well. Now, what I recommend for selling deals, so I'm a big fan of profit. So I always say you want to list your deals first on places you make the most profit, right? MLS, Facebook Marketplace, Craigslist. Okay. Those are like retail listings almost, right? Maybe it's 80% of the property value. It's still slightly discounted. So I recommend for everyone, first put it where you profit the most, then find the builders, the cash buyers. And then because a builder, they need it at a discount, right? A cash buyer, they need it at a discount, but the MLS and Facebook Marketplace, they're often buying close to retail. And so that's the advice I give to make sure my clients profit as much as possible.
Gotcha. We've kind of alluded to this a little bit, but I'm curious, what kind of person do you think should or should not be utilizing cold calling? Like, it sounds like if somebody isn't willing to follow up with everybody quickly, or they're just terrified of the phone, maybe cold calling's not for them. I don't know. Do you have any thoughts on that? What do you think?
I think if somebody is not willing to call the leads back, that they should not use us, right? Similar to that guy who's like, I'm not going to call these leads, right? It's like, now, if they know they need to and they just don't want to, I encourage my clients to call me. I say all the time, like, I'll screw your head on straight. If you have a lead and you really want to call it and you're scared, you can call me. But, there is a person out there, and the other person is a pessimistic person. A lot of people, you can tell when someone doesn't want to call the leads because they'll have a bunch of excuses. I had one guy, I got him leads and goes, all these leads suck. And I go, how'd the calls go? He goes, I just told you they sucked. So you didn't call anybody, right? And so some people, when they look at things, and they're very pessimistic, they also should not hire us. Okay? If you think everything is crap and everything sucks and life isn't good and you're down on your luck, I would also not use a service like mine, because that's not going to change that. Every lead you get, they say even a scarce person who's rich is still scared they're going to lose all their money, right? It's like, they still have that innate thing. Now, a lot of my training that I offer that's free, I do work on people's optimism a lot. Like some of the things I said today, every lead's worth 2 to 5 minutes of your time. Simple sayings like that make it easy for people to take action. So my goal is to turn my clients into optimistic warriors, right? For lack of a better term, because I understand a lot of people are pessimistic. But if you can't get over that pessimism, then I would not hire us. And I'll just share one little story. So this customer calls me up. This is a house guy and in Dallas, which is like one of the hardest markets. And he's like, this sucks. These leads suck. This sucks. Da, da, da. And I said, did you know if you were my acquisition manager, I'd fire you right now? And he goes, I'd fire myself too. I was just trying to remind people that when we go on and on and on, and we're being super negative about things, like we don't want to see that in our staff, right? And it's okay, but I ended up getting through to him with that line, and he totally got it. And then he changed his attitude, right? And that's what I'm pretty good at. I'm pretty good at like checking people in like a soft way. If someone said that to you in your business, and I said, and if your acquisition manager just overheard you saying the leads suck, he's never going to close another deal. He's going to come in and say, even you said the leads suck, man. And so leads and the way we talk about them in our business is the most important thing. Those are our customers. If you own a business and a customer walks in and you go, this customer's making me work, you're going to be fired. Okay. That customer is the only reason why the business is there. And I think I have that attitude from my restaurant career, because I've had that talk. I remember when I was 18 years old, I'm a cook and I'm complaining about how busy I am. And the manager calls me in the back and she goes, hey, that's the only reason you're here. Like if you're complaining about cooking food when you're a cook at a restaurant, she's like, that's not good. Okay. And I'll never forget that day. She's like, I need you to stop complaining about that. She was so right. And it's kind of that's actually an epiphany for me. I've never told those two stories combined before, but it's very similar. We can't talk about our customers like that. And if you do, and if you can't get over it, and that's the perk of us having no contracts and no commitments. If you hire us and it's not right for you, don't hire us again. And I mean it. I still can provide lists. I still can provide skip tracing. I can even do text messaging and some other stuff, but it's like, but maybe just the cold calling or that strategy isn't right for you.
It's a really interesting thing you bring up about pessimism or even like skepticism or cynicism. It's just like kind of a negative underlying attitude about life in general. It's I've heard it said that kind of thing is kind of like salt in the recipe, where like it's very important to have a little bit of that, but it's very easy to overdo it and it just spoils everything. And I wonder what would be like a test one could run against themselves to see, like, am I being too pessimistic right now? And I say this as somebody who I think I'm somewhat guilty of this. I get pessimistic about stuff, and I probably need somebody like you in my corner to like, say, hey, buck up. Like things aren't all bad. And I just think it's one of those things where your thoughts control your life. And it's very easy for that kind of thing to creep in and almost get you to a point of like, I'm not going to take responsibility for my own inaction. I want to blame somebody else. That feels a lot better for me. I don't know. I feel bad for somebody in your position when that happens, because like, it's not necessarily your fault. It's just that somebody's being lazy and they're putting it on you.
So I'll actually share the solution to that. This is a true story. When I was 14 years old, I found that I was always thinking the worst thing ever was going to happen to me. Okay. If I go ask a girl out, she's going to say no. If the bell dings in my classroom, I'm getting written up. If the teacher calls me in, I'm getting suspended. I always ended up thinking the worst thing was going to happen to me. Then it hit me, this is true, that it's not fair for me to only think of a negative outcome. So I had a rule, and I encourage you and everyone else to do this. Every time I had a negative thought, I forced myself to have an equally as positive thought. Well, what if I get fired? Well, what if I get a promotion? Well, what if she slaps me? Well, what if she kisses me? Right? And so it's like I ended up telling myself this. And what happened over time is the positive thing is actually what happened
Oh,
time and
interesting.
time again.
Yeah.
Right? And after that happened 20, 30, 40 times, it becomes easier to push down the negative thoughts. And it's that level of training. And I literally did that to myself because I knew how unfair it was. Like, Nick, it's not right for you to only focus on the negative side of what you think is going to happen. So I ran that experience with myself, and then it really worked out for me. Now I have this multi-million-dollar company. I used to be a restaurant manager. And what was funny is when my company blew up, all my friends, then they wanted to start listening to me. And I was like, guys, I've been positive this whole time. I just wasn't making enough money for anyone to listen to yet. But, I never hated my restaurant career. I never hated my clients. I never hated my boss. I mean, I may have been put in bad situations, but what I loved was the experience I was getting as opposed to the situation I was in. And it is not easy to have an optimistic outlook. So I think that's a good point that you're making. It's like, and then it's not easy to keep it because then you're being optimistic. And just so you know, people that are optimistic make mistakes. It's a scientific study that angry people make less mistakes than happy people do. Because happy people, they think everything's going to be okay, right? Now, that being said, those angry people, they don't have happier lives, right? They just make less mistakes, right? But it's like, and that's why I think it is smart for us to have a healthy amount of skepticism, exactly like you said. We can't ignore the skeptical side, but we should give it 10%, right? 15% max of our energy. We have to tell ourselves things. And I'll just share one last little thing. I had one of my first business partner, and I was a lead generator. He was the closer. He used to say, Nick, read me the notes and lie to me. And what he meant was, tell me how bad this person wants to sell. I don't give a what the notes say. He said, because I know it's how I feel about the call that's going to govern where the call goes. And to this day, that's one of my favorite things I've ever experienced. Tell me about this lead and lie to me, right? And it's because tell me how good this call is going to go. Tell me how bad they want to sell their house. That's going to give me the energy and the motivation to make this call. If I read that and it says all this negative stuff or whatever, I am not going to feel very positive about that interaction. So, I think there's a level of delusion that we need to a certain degree to really accomplish our goals. I mean, look at Elon Musk, right? And he's like, I'm going to blast rockets into space and I'm going to get them to land themselves on the ground.
Yeah.
He couldn't accomplish that with pessimism. He couldn't have, right? You can't have these grand ideas if you think that's not going to work.
Yeah, that is interesting how being realistic doesn't always serve you well. Like that can really just limit you and hold you back. So, yeah, it's fascinating. So, two more questions for you. We're almost done. So, one question is, how do you see cold calling changing in the next 5 years, if at all? Do you have any future predictions on where this side of the industry is going to go? If it's going to be easier or harder or different in some way?
So I guess the only thing I can relate it to is houses. Okay. Because houses, cold calling has been around forever with that. And with houses, it's just your market selection has become the most important thing with houses. With land, like I said, stay away from the super metros. That's pretty easy. Like you mentioned, a lot of people shouldn't be there anyways. And an infill lot in a super metro might as well be the same as a house, right? Now, with houses, if anyone is in a city or any touristy location, I tell them to get out of there. And I say, the more suburban, the better off it is. So the soft prediction is if things do get more saturated, we just go further out from the good news about land is we're often further out from the city already, which is one of the reasons why it works really well. But even when because houses, we've been doing that for 8 years, we still get amazing results. Maybe we don't get amazing results in Dallas or Houston or Miami or Phoenix or Southern California, right? But nobody does, so on any strategy, right? But so I see as time goes on, being more selective with markets. AI, I think, is going to phase itself out. I think AI is a threat for all the wrong reasons. AI is technically illegal. AI is a robodial. Now, robodials were made illegal when Trump's first presidency were in office. And what that means is there's a phone call and there's not a human behind the phone call. That's what a robodial is. What I'm scared about with AI is before it gets super regulated, that they're going to start calling hundreds of thousands of people against the law, and then that's going to cause additional regulation to come out. And then AI calls suck. I don't know if I get them on my phone. There's a pause, there's a gap. You can tell the person doesn't have a lot of inflection, so I do have a slight concern about what AI is going to do to the industry. It's already been regulated against. At first AI was okay, and then 6 months ago they deemed it a robocall officially. So it does fall under that illegal act, like a RVM, right? So RVMs are also illegal. You can get sued for doing RVMs. You can get sued for doing the robocalls. But so on the base level, market selection. On the deep level, with AI blowing up and people, and then also AI being used for scams, right? I think AI being used to buy and sell houses isn't that big of a deal. But if it's being used to buy and sell houses, and it's going to be used to scam Americans out of their money, right? Which I've already gotten calls from fake Chase Bank and all kinds of stuff, right? So I'm interested to see what happens as a result of that, but they're doing a good job of regulating proactively with that. But so that I think is the question mark. But at its core, I think market selection is going to be the big difference.
That was actually my second question: is what role do you see AI playing in all this? You basically just got into it without me prompting you, but it is interesting. So a couple weeks ago, there's a website called 11 Labs, which I've known about forever. It's you can clone your own voice, or you can make your voice sound like other voices, or do text to speech, all this stuff. But they've got this AI voice agent now, where you can, in a matter of seconds, create basically a phone agent, and you can even talk to it right there. And it's using something called Gemini Flash 1.5, I think it is. It's a model that responds like immediately. There's no gap at all, and it sounds stunningly real. It's just like, I don't see how this could not play some role in the future. I do think there's something going to happen with regulation and all that. I don't know where that's going to go or what's going to stick.
The way that that's legal is if it's only on follow-up calls. Does that make sense? So I think AI is going to play a huge role, a bigger role maybe in acquisitions than lead generation. Does that make sense? Because it's not legal to robocall a cold person. It is going to be legal to, oh, you already said yes to a human. Now let's put you. So one thing I'm even looking into, I just started working with this AI partner for my clients. And it's like, because I think AI is great after the lead's generated, right? Let that follow up for you and sift through the lead and all that other stuff. And then you're still not breaking the law with the robo-dials and all that other stuff. So, but I do see a huge function after the lead is generated for AI coming soon.
I mean, you could even train the thing to be Nicholas Nick, like respond like he would, like answer the objections this way, and do it in the same tone of, all this stuff you could do. And I could, for somebody who is terrified of phone calls or just doesn't want to do them or whatever that excuse is, I feel like there could be a future where that fixes that.
I should look into that just as a solution for follow-up calls for my clients, right? It's like, hey, you can upload it my 10 YouTube videos and just tell it to go nuts.
Like hundreds of call transcripts that went well or something like that.
Yeah. No, yeah, I think I like that idea, especially when you utilize it properly, right? It's about where you put the stuff in the process that makes it acceptable or not. I don't think anything's ever going to beat an American human on the phone, but I mean, it might in 5 or 10 years. But I think that's a great first impression, and I could totally see automating or AI tomating the follow-up sequence there.
Yeah, totally. So if people want to check out Lead Mining Pros, we do have an affiliate link to Nick's website, retipster.com/lead mining pros. You can also find links to that and a lot of the other stuff we talked about in the show notes today. REtipster.com/204 is where you can find that. Anything else you want to leave us with?
No, the most important thing I say when people say this, as I chatted about it today, is the negative lead self-talk. Now, I would just say, if you're in business, think processes. Okay. If, we get wrong numbers, or what do we do when we get a wrong number? Right? Like there's a process that can overcome anything. And so I know we want the hottest and I know we want the sharpest, but let's think about what process we are putting the lead through that can change their mind. If they're mad that they've spoken to 10 other investors before you, your process should tell them how you're different and how you're more reputable. And so it's like, instead of just taking a lead as dead or over disqualifying a lead, I want everyone watching to think about a process they could put that lead through that will keep them as a qualified lead. I think too many people out there right now are over disqualifying leads, and they're using price to do that, when in reality, they should be using the relationship to get that property at a lower price. At first glance, if I just talk to anyone right off the street, you're paying top dollar, period. When I fall in love with you, when I see that you have respect and integrity, only then would I consider changing my top dollar amount. And I think that we want to shortcut that with people. But my challenge to my clients and anyone watching is come up with a system that gets them to fall in love with you so they can receive that lower offer with the bigger heart. Right. And that's one of the processes that, I offer in one of my free courses. But it's like, it's not just it's a dead lead. It's like we talked about, take a little bit of responsibility, see what we can do. Let's take a look at what we could do differently to really crack that code. And the last thing I'll say is, I told you I was a cold caller. I was doing 300 to 600 dials a day for 3 months. What I realized was that there is a phrase that we could use on every person that opens them wide up. I don't know what that phrase is. That's not the point of me saying this.
Oh, come on.
I know, I really don't.
I'm imagining my seat here.
I know, but you'd be surprised. And I'll give you a couple examples. I cold called to New York, and this guy says, he's yelling at me, "What do you think, you're being cute?" And I said, "Well, I do think I am pretty cute, but sir, I'm not trying to be cute with you right now." Okay. I had one guy say, "If you can find my ex-wife for me, I'll talk to you about selling this house." Right. And so it's like, you'll find when you have an open heart and a good attitude that it's not always this black and white nut to crack. Sometimes talking to them for a minute, sometimes having that time with them, you'll find the right words. As soon as they realize that you are a real human being, you've got them right where you want them. So find those opportunities to crack that seller wide open and get them to trust you. And you'll, now that I even said this, you'll say a phrase and the whole call will shift. They're easier to talk to, they're calmer, they're friendlier. So when you figure out that exists, it's going to work wonders for you as well.
Yeah, there really is an art to that, to being a human and finding those opportunities to show your humanity. And, if you can find ways to insert humor in there and all this stuff, not everybody has that naturally, but I think it can be developed. So I don't really know what it takes to do that, actually. I can't say I'm awesome at it. Sometimes I find ways to do it, but
it takes 13 years of restaurant management.
Yeah.
Yeah. I have some of these ideologies because, of the things I've had to overcome. And I love what you're saying, because a lot of my advice is perfect coming from me, because everything I described today is how I am. I'm overtly optimistic. I am humorous. I do love walking into situations and coming out with people loving me. So it's like, I do get off on that stuff to a degree,
It's also interesting, your story about how, you spent 13 years in the restaurant business, but I assume you weren't a millionaire doing that. It wasn't until you shifted to this new thing. Just makes you wonder how many people out there have a millionaire mind, but they're not in a millionaire seat. Like they literally can't get there based on where they are, and how it's not going to happen unless they figure out what to shift to. I got to think there's lots of people like that out there. They could be great if they could just get into a different situation.
Well, and I'll share real quick. I know we're wrapping up here, but I was a restaurant manager. and I was pretty exceptional. And I remember looking around and realizing, and I capped at 65,000 a year. So the most I ever made, I was working 70 hours a week. I was making $65,000 a year, and I was borrowing money from my parents at least once a month. And I was paying them back. That's why I had to borrow more. But I was like rough. And I knew I was better. And then one day I go into work and I'm scheduled 90 hours a week for 6 weeks straight.
Jeez, that's crazy.
And I was salary, so I don't make more. And I ended up realizing that it's time. I'm better than this. And I quit that job. I walked out on that career, and I decided to never apply for another restaurant job again because I knew I would get it. Then I got on with that education company and my life exploded. So I think the big lesson there is if you're in a spot and you can tell your superior and you're ready for more, you have to burn the boats. You have to, because as long as that boat's there, you've got an out and you can do it. And so it's like I burned the boats, but it took 13 years. And then I finally made it. And now I'm where I am now, and I couldn't be more thankful. But walking out and making that massive change and committing to a new life. No, it honestly couldn't get worse than restaurant. I'm working midnight till 3 or noon till 3 a.m. Okay. So like, oh, I was like, it can't get any worse than this, and I was right. It literally only got better. And now I make what I used to make in a year and a month, and I'm working 10 hours a week instead of 70. But, it really takes us having that epiphany and believing in ourselves to make that move.
Yeah. I spent a small stint as a chef at a restaurant, and it's super stressful, man. I burned out real quick on that. My brain just couldn't handle it.
Yeah, no, it's crazy. I think, we get off on the adrenaline. I used to joke and say I work 12 hours because it feels like 8. That was a joke I used to like.
Yeah.
You see, my whole life I have these dumb quotes I told myself so I didn't get depressed. But no, you're exactly right. It's a war zone back there.
Well, Nick, thanks for coming on. It's great to talk to you. Again, retipster.com/lead mining pros. You can check out the show notes, retipster.com/204. And we'll talk to you next time.
Yeah, I'll see you, brother.